Okay, we have a quick update on the situation going on between Moses Itauma and the WBA regular champion, Pulev. So, without making it too confusing, I'm going to break it down in a way everyone can understand. According to multiple sources of my sources, close with the WBA, Pulev was granted a voluntary title defense after his arbitration and everything like that, after all that. However, it said within a reasonable time. Okay, a reasonable time window. They already gave him that window. And since he did not do it in a timely manner, the situation has created a gray area, um, which basically confuses some people, but not myself. I know what's going on. The WBA said that there was no such agreement. The WBA Championship Committee said themselves that there was no such agreement, for Pulev to take on Gassiev. So the WBA has to stay on point here that they would be ordering a mandatory after giving Pulev plenty of time to choose his voluntary opponent. That window expired, clear as day, expired, and then they issued a mandatory challenger for his WBA regular belt. So, how does Itauma and Pulev move forward with this? It's pretty simple, actually. Either Itauma uh, keeps on forcing this matter and keep his foot on the neck in negotiations and says, "Well, we're not taking any kind of step aside because that's key number one. Is they would have to come to a settlement on the outside, and this is according to my sources, which are various at this point. The WBA has to give them a window to choose a voluntary defense. However, that defense expired. Now we have this situation going on where, oh, he's claiming that him and the WBA made this agreement, yet the agreement expired. And it's pretty simple from there that unless if Pulev can come up with a settlement with Itauma, he could end up losing that belt outside the ring. And let me explain to you why. Because Gassiev, Gassiev isn't a mandatory challenger. He's just somebody who's been waiting in the corner. And I'm not saying that Gassiev isn't a good fighter, but he just hasn't done quite what is required. In order to be in a fight with Pulev. However, he has had good past fights. Of course, we know about his war with Usyk. Mm, we also remember, him fighting some cans and looking good like a year or two ago. So, to be honest with you, Gassiev isn't even on the radar right now, and he kind of came away from off the radar. And we know the WBA regular champion is doing this, or is trying to do this to stall or to bide himself some more time with the WBA regular belt. We have to look at all possible vantage points here. Okay, so the WBA wants to tell you, oh, you got a voluntary defense within a reasonable time frame. The reasonable time frame expires. WBA issues a mandatory for your regular belt. Yet you deviate to somebody that you were in negotiations with back when that window was still open. So if you did not sign that, the WBA Championship Committee is now claiming that no such agreement was made for Pulev to have a voluntary defense here, especially after the window expired. So what does that tell you? Man, I wish there was a way to ping counterpunch boxing on this, because he is low key hating on Moses Itauma. A lot of people are low key hating on Moses Itauma. And let me explain. When you start out and you're fast tracking your way up, nobody wants to see a really young cat uh, beat up on the top of the division, the guys who are 35, 40 years old, hanging out at the top of the division with their crowns and their belts and their trinkets. And nobody wants to see their old hero get taken down by a young man. That's what the real problem is. That's what they're really afraid of. That a young man will come around and beat up the old champ. And everyone here knows what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about Itauma and Pulev. Because I'm telling you, Itauma has the skill, the in-ring capability to put a belt to his ass. But he's one of the few fighters in the sport that has the ability to do so. Now, people may say he's untested. Well, when you're fast tracking, you don't have a lot of time to fight people who are off of your path. So if he said after his last fight that he wanted a secondary champion, that I said that he was going to pursue a secondary champion. And people started saying, "Oh, he's gonna duck. He ducked Frank Sanchez because this was IBF final eliminator." Well, is the IBF final eliminator a secondary belt? Hmm? Yeah, let me look down the list here. Oh yeah, no. Itauma, when Itauma and his camp decided to push the Pulev fight, they had to look at all means and all things. These situations can happen because Itauma is not going to sit back and let pulev just sit there and try to
All right, now with this Itauma situation, we have to look at the full picture. Kubrat Pulev, WBC champion or the WBA championship committee, because the championship committee clearly stated clear as day, that Pulev, his window to choose a voluntary defense has expired. It's pretty ridiculous that he would deviate to such tactics, creating a bunch of confusion and possible arbitration. Now, the WBA regular belt as of late has been underneath arbitration before. We saw that with the Manuel Char situation with that, and of course, not Manuel Char not being able to fight in the United States and all that stuff. That was very confusing in itself to deal with. So this situation here, I'm not really that surprised with it because there's just been a whole bunch of confusion surrounded by this secondary belt in the heavyweight division. It's a pattern. It is what it is, man. I mean, the fact of the matter is Itauma needs to keep his foot on the neck of Pulev and keep on petitioning the WBA, and things will rule in his favor. Because you can even look it up. You can type it into Google. You can listen. You can look at all this stuff that I'm telling you. The WBA Championship Committee makes the decisions for their belts, or makes the decision of whom is fighting for their belts, who's a mandatory defense, who is a voluntary defense. And of course, a lot of people are just taking the knee, be like, "Oh, he was just gonna fight an old man anyway, in order to get a secondary belt to get a shot at Usyk." Well, those are nothing but haters. You know, I mean, if you're 44 years old and still a champion or a secondary champion, I would consider that a great achievement. But when the situation with Itauma and Pulev, oh, it's a bum bash. You know what I mean? Like, it's isn't that what the sport is for? You know, the passing of the torch a little bit. You know, Pulev will probably give Itauma some decent rounds before absolutely getting sparked. You know, because I know the skill of Itauma doesn't mean that I think lowly of Kubrat Pulev. It's a really simple thing here, guys. Definitely not, definitely not hating on the WBA regular champion Pulev. He's had a career. He's fought everybody. He's been around the block several times, and you know, I respect the man, but at the same time, I I honestly think he's on the cycle out because Itama has put him on notice. You know, and everybody's thinking that this fight with Gassiev is going to come without any ramifications. That is the part that I would have to disagree with many, many content creators. Because and the WBA Championship Committee stated that an, a settlement must be agreed upon in order for Murat Gassiev and Kubrat Pulev to fight. Yeah, it's pretty obvious, guys. No settlement has been agreed upon. No settlement has been agreed upon. And the simple matter here is that we have Moses haters circling the drain, keeping him down, saying how low of a fighter he is. You know, fighting cans or whatever it is. I mean, he just sparked Dillian White in the first round. Nobody does that. Nobody does that, man. And Itama is going in there, showing out in style. Of course, these low key, the Usyk fanboys know this is what's going on. Uh, I can't believe I'm saying Usyk has fanboys, but he does have a bit of a following in which justifies any one of his moves, regardless if they're good or bad, including Usyk faking this injury versus which was meant to be in negotiations with the WBA interim champion Joseph Park. It's very, very obvious, guys. Joseph Parker, he was at Usyk's store, deviates, and now we got Worley and Parker coming up in 8 days' time. Good morning, Alonzo. With the Itauma situation, we have to look at it in a very, very interesting way because no matter what happens with the WBA Championship Committee's decision on this matter, it's ultimate. It's ultimate. No decision was made. No agreement was made past the expiration of the voluntary defense window. The window has expired to all those people listening. And when a deal expires, you go on to the next deal. They're not just going to allow Pulev to just sit on his belt for a million years. I'll tell you that much. And fighting Gassiev. Let's just be real on the Gassiev fight. He hasn't really done much at all. I mean, like at heavyweight, he's fought all okay competition, but worthy of a secondary belt, I must say, is a little bit too up the way. You know, I haven't seen Gassiev pummeling on somebody in the top 5 WBA rankings. I mean, I've seen him fight people outside of those rankings, but it's like, okay, you're just pinning them up in there. But I knew that he was somewhat of a dark horse beforehand because of the Don King situation with Michael Hunter and the whole confusion. So we have to move on. We have to move on with this. We need to stop this Moses hate. He's going to move. He's going to pursue the WBA regular belt regardless. Even if the WBA clarifies that Pulev versus Gassiev can go through, then all all that is just going to stir up a bit of madness here. I know. Now here's my thing. Here's my thing. Who if the WBA committee announces that they're going to allow Pulev versus Gassiev under the exception that they fight Itauma next, I could see a scenario like that happening because Itauma is the mandatory for the regular belt. That's not old news. We've known about it for 2-3 days now. And with this situation, I believe a good second option for Moses Itauma is no other than, and this guy is ranked in the top 10 in both the WBA and the IBF. Two-time Olympic gold medalist, Bakodir Jalalov. If you want to send a message, Itauma, especially to the news stop and to the champion, the world undisputed champion, and send a message to Joseph Parker and Wardley, beat up on Jalalov. If Pulev and the WBA are allowed to go that voluntary defense course. But until the WBA comes out and says something about a settlement being reached, all this is nothing but a bunch of hot air. All these people are content creators like Counterpunch going around saying, oh, the fight's been outright canceled. Yet he doesn't want to bring up that he's mandatory for the regular belt and the window has already expired to have voluntary defense. So make it make sense, Counterpunch. You wanted to post a video. You're being quite a bit too hasty because sometimes information comes out little by little and you jump on this little bit of information that ends up twisting whatever you have going on in your content, and then you have to adapt to that because you didn't wait for the information to come in accordingly. Yesterday I was like, well, pulev is I was like, man, Pulev's trying to duck Itauma. That's what my first thoughts were. And I was also thinking, is this what Frank Warren said? Is he one of the guys who are asking for too much money, but at the same time, Pulev does hold a version of a world belt. He is paying sanctioning fees and all that good stuff, or the belt fees, as I should better yet say, because you know how the WBA and the WBC, WBO, I mean, in any of the sanctioning bodies, they have a secondary champion. That's just another way for them to draw on revenue. So this supposed voluntary defense, in my opinion, is null and void. The WBA championship committee said it clear as day. I'm not going to argue with that. But what I'm not going to sit down and deal with is content creators seeming to go and say stuff that the WBA didn't say. That's one thing I'm not going to set aside and let happen. The WBA gave them a window. And once they say you got a mandatory, buddy, it's time for the mandatory. So I'm sure they're in talks at this moment. Because I just got off. I got off the talks probably about 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, from my source. Yeah, so yeah, they're already talking, man. And like the WBA championship committee is like, what in the hell are you doing, Pulev? We gave you your window to choose a voluntary defense, and you wanted to wait only until after the mandatory? You had a window to sign the contract. You have a time window. That's why we have stuff called deadlines in this world. If you don't meet that deadline, you might as well wipe your ass with that contract you signed with Gassiev. It's nothing but Charmin toilet paper with ink on it. That's all that contract is. And I'm not trying to hate on the brands, on the off-brand toilet paper right there. That's not an insult there. Toilet paper is toilet paper. It just seems like some contracts are just more trash than others. Of course, Itauma is going to move on regardless. I want to see him fight Bakodir Jalalov. Jalalov's had these boring ass fights. He's hyped up. At the same time, it looks to me in this last fight, he had to take a step back from 10 rounds to 8 rounds, and then ends up getting It looks like absolute ass in the 8 rounder. Let him fight Itauma, bro. Let him fight Itauma. That's what I think. He's ranked high enough. He looks stupid at times. I honestly think Bakadir Jalilov is a good fighter. I think he beat the shit out of Richard Torres multiple times, and I I don't hate on Richard Torres, but at the same time, I'm not going to sit back and hear people say, "Oh, Bakadir Jalilov is this extremely horrible fighter." I mean, promotionally wise, he hasn't been pushed like if he were with a bigger promoter. It's like we've seen this before. We've seen this before with the William Skull situation. Him going through a bunch of local promotions. You don't know where the guy comes from because he's been fighting in a promotion in Argentina or another one in Aegon in Germany. So not everybody's gonna have that meteoric rise to the top very, very quickly, unless your promoter is Eddie Hearn or Bob Arum or Salah and Turkey Al Sheikh with what they're putting on in Riyadh season. Because Turkey Al Sheikh isn't really a promoter to say the extent he's over the entertainment industry within Saudi Arabia. So, and he brings all this money. Of course, these people think, oh, he's a promoter, but in all reality, he's not a promoter. He's not. He's like a he's like an advisor that comes to the meetings. I see him more as like an advisor. And Riyadh season is the show, and Salah is the promoter. That's really how I see it. And I see Turkey Al Sheikh trying to go into business with this Dana White and the Zuffa boxing venture, of course, under that TKO umbrella. And of course, we can jump down that rabbit hole any day of the week because Riyadh season is basically luring in the sheep. They're a bunch of wolves luring in the sheep. And when the time comes, the pay scales go down for the fighters, and it takes away from their financial well-being. While the Unified Boxing Organization, or the UBO for short, reaps all the benefits. Of course, we need to get away from that. We got away from that with the Ali Act. Otherwise, people would still be, or otherwise, fighters would be paying $10,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 for a towel. Like, come on here, guys. You'd have more of like how Don King screwed over Iron Mike. And so I look at this UBO venture. I see it as I see a UBO being a good idea as long as the right people are involved. But I don't trust this group of people here at all. Turkey Al Sheikh, if you've listened to my previous videos, you should know about my report on Al Hayr prison, the Tutu wing, which 5,000 people are in the Tutu wing for criticizing Turkey al Sheikh. Of course, a couple of them, a good percentage of them, I should even better say, are in there are sentenced to 20 years in this prison for criticizing Turkey al Sheikh. So this is dictatorship that people are kind of begging for in the sport of boxing. Yet this man intends on screwing the fighters on the back end, and you guys are drinking the Kool-Aid because other people are telling you to do so. I didn't trust him with when it was skills challenge. I didn't trust him when they switched it over to this Riyadh season stuff. The way they promoted it was like, it sounded so stupid. It sounded like every other word out of their mouth was the name of the show they were putting on. Oh, skills challenge, skills challenge, skills challenge. Like it was like I can't even. I wish I could go back a couple of years. I might need to skim through some footage and probably make a rap song about how stupid TKO and Riyadh season is at certain times. In regards to promotion, of course, they make good they make good trailers for the fights and all that. That's not my issue. My issue is having true evil running a sport. True evil. And if Dana White was so set on boxing, then why I'm gonna rock with Sean Zittle on this. And I really don't like Sean Zittle on many takes in regards to kissing ass to certain fighters and stuff like that. But he brought up something really good at the press conference before Canelo and Crawford. And he says, "You're sitting here, you've already paid $300+ million in antitrust lawsuits, and more, you got more on the way. So how do you expect that model to work in boxing, bro? Are you gonna be handing out, or are you gonna be battling antitrust lawsuit after antitrust lawsuit because you don't want to pay the fighters accordingly? You want to reap all the benefits, give fighters the breadcrumbs to make them fight more often. I mean, I think fighting more often should be a mandatory thing for fighters, but don't torch their payday like that, because let me tell you why. You do that, the value of the fight game is gonna plummet. It's going to take 10 years. It would take Zuffa boxing 10 years to generate enough attention, revenue to build these prospects or these supposed prospects up to the level they want to build them up to. Of course, they can fast track all day long, but promotionally as a whole, they can't just be going, thumping their chest over some California State Athletic Commission ruling, in which many of the people in that committee were definitely bribed to not go or just say okay. But one thing I will say is the California State Athletic Commission is one of the easiest state athletic commissions in the whole entire United States. I mean, hell, I could go get a fight in San Jose and not even be sanctioned. So, what makes you think that they wouldn't allow somebody who's throwing around money not put on a fight there? Like I don't trust California's athletic commission very well. I don't trust Las Vegas. I don't trust New York because of some really, really horrible situations in the past couple of years. Not only that, it goes back 10 years, maybe 15 years for me. Uh, the reason why I don't trust those athletic commissions. No, I trust Florida. I think Florida is a good athletic commission. Tennessee is very strict. Um, very strict. They don't let very much slide at all. Like when you see like fighters showing up hurt and stuff like that, or it's really hard to get that past the Tennessee Athletic Commission and their doctors. It's just one of them things. It I've always heard that California is a lot more lenient on fighters getting clearances, and in matters of integrity, I think that is also a very important thing. You know, California State Athletic Commission being loose with, or I would say lenient on what they would allow go on in their state. You know, I'm not very surprised with that. But by no means does the California State Athletic Commission speak for the other states and territories of the United States. You know, it's that simple. All right then. Back to business. Back to business, bro. Cooking these clowns, bro. Itauma. These Itauma haters. These undercover Usyk fanboys, bro. I got them all found out. I got them all found out. They want any. These guys are low key looking for any opportunity to postpone or delay the advancement of Moses Itauma. I already know, like on the low key, what they're doing. I was listening to this Discord filled with Usyk fanboys last night, and it all came to me, bro. It all came to me. Like, it all happened at once. Like when I thought, okay, Usyk haters, content creators, people thinking Moses Atama's just fighting cans and stuff like that. But he's advancing up the rankings like a meteor, and he's doing it in style, moving towards a secondary belt in which he said he wanted after his fight with Dillian White. If you would have been listening to him rather than ridiculing him all the damn time, you probably would have heard what he would have said. So him being that mandatory for the WBA regular belt and ranked number one in the WBO rankings underneath Usyk and the interim champion Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker, who is unifying his belt next weekend against the WBA interim champion Fabio Wardley. Of course, what I believe this is all going to set up in the first place is if they allow Pulev to fight Gassiev in December. I believe that that's going to lead to Itauma fighting someone, hopefully of the level of Bakodir Jalalov or somebody in the top 10 to keep him relevant and in position to be on Pulev's back. I want to see him absolutely demolish whomever it is, bro. But he is mandatory for the WBA regular belt, so there's no way in hell Pulev can get away from fighting him. That's all I'm trying to say on that. This is hilarious, man. And these Usyk fanboys are sitting here dancing at what's going on. It's hilarious. These Usyk fanboys are like, yes, Wardley and Parker, and they want to deviate to other topics. They don't want to listen to the whole picture. They want to see Atama being snubbed by the WBA regular champion to delay. But in my opinion, Usyk is going to be fighting somebody who's not even a champion. Usyk's next fight is going to be a voluntary defense. I can tell you that much. So we know that he's going to, whatever fight it is, it's not going to be very relevant to the fighters climbing the rankings. It's just going to be an event stalling whoever is climbing up the ladder to reach the top. This joke is going to end, and I'm not going to sit back and watch these content creators take over this narrative. Of course, this narrative that they're coming up with is recycled shit. And Usyk fanboys hating on, yeah, these Usyk fanboys. Which one are you talking about? Please explain, Alonzo. But anyways, Usyk is just gonna be ducking the rest of the days, bro. We already know that he faked the freaking injury and delayed negotiations, leading to Parker moving on to fighting Wardley. Of course, Usyk's gonna sit there and probably not even gonna fight until spring or summer. Yeah, this is just going to be absolutely ridiculous with the Itauma and the whole entire clowning from these people going and saying that Itauma is not who they say he is, bro. Itauma is a beast. Itauma is the future. Has a future in this division. Of course, the fight that I want to see is Itauma versus Cabio. But I don't see Cabio going any other route other than just waiting for his turn. Yeah, wait his turn to fight Usyk, and that's all it is. He's like, why do I need to fight at this time? I was in a good scrap my last bout. It's This is just funny. This is just funny that all these clowns out there hating on Atama, they don't even think. I don't even think they believe what's going on. Of course, they're gonna have to come up with a settlement. This is nothing old, nothing new. This is nothing new, man. It's an absolute joke. You know, counterpunch boxing needs to stop clowning around. I wish I could have pinged him in the title or in the title of this, but For some reason, I ran into some technical issues where I couldn't do that. So maybe I could do like a YouTube short, in which I may come up with a concept here very quickly. So, in terms of content creation, in terms of taking or putting some reality in the actual narrative in the sport of boxing, the truth is that the only narrative in the sport of boxing is the truth, bro. That's facts. And if you can accept that there are clowns calling themselves pundits, calling themselves experts, going around on YouTube platforms or going from show to show, calling yourself an expert, you're just not able to stay on track because you sound like a fanboy one way or the other. You got to be unbiased in your context, bro, in order to call yourself an expert. So if you want to sit there and fanboy about Hagler or Ali or who else, Hearns or anybody over and over and over again, instead of talking about modern day fighters, like I hear countless times, them comparing these new age fighters to the fighters of old. I mean, there's eras for a reason. There's different eras of boxing. So these people want to make up some fictitious thing in their head. You know, of course, I can go around and fight 150 bums, win all the fights, and call myself the greatest of all time because I knocked out more people than Archie Moore. Archie Moore, of course, has the most knockouts in boxing history. Well, at least under the modern way of putting things when it comes to like Marquis of Queensberry rules. Yeah, I would say ever since after that, or post Marquis of Queensberry rules, that you know it's looking up for them, bro. It's looking up for them. But screw Turkey Al Sheik and the TKO umbrella. All these fangirls and can't accept the fact that Turkey Al Sheik is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and they have a bunch of poop on their heads. They're never gonna get over it. And I'm just going to focus my energy on creating content to direct that to counterpunch boxing to hopefully give them a smack to the face and give them a reality check. And, that's why I make content. I don't make content for monetary gain. You know why? Because I'm not going to sit there and be fake and buy followers. If somebody wants to really follow me or really watch me, like I see a couple of people coming on here every now and then, but few people actually sit back and listen to what I have to say. They want to make assumptions based off of their bias, and they want to be like, oh, he's not sitting here sounding like a bunch of kiss ass. I'm not. This dude's speaking too real for me. Man, these people should know that I'm definitely not a kiss ass. I don't sit there and freaking kiss ass to a fighter just because the media is making them thus. I mean, these guys make their assumptions based off of media hype, not based off of in-ring performances. Because a lot of these prospects coming up, they label, oh, the future of boxing, the future of the sport. We've heard it time after time after time for fighters being called the future of the sport. Absolutely clown worthy. I enjoy talking about it. But that's media bias for you. But in all reality, screw the media. You know what I mean? I could care less about sucking up to a certain or speaking a certain way in which I don't believe. Okay, so let me put it to you this way. Fighters were screwed over for the longest time. A lot of fighters had 50% of their wages taken by their managers before they even had to pay their promoters. And like it's crazy, man. Like they had to not before, but what I'm saying is the managers would always take max from them. The promoters would take their percent from them. It's just absolute shit. They're going after all the act. I'm against screwing over the fighters. I am against screwing over those fighters. I will never be for this new bill that they're trying to pass. I haven't heard enough people talk about it. Of course, there are several videos out there on it. Hardly anyone provides much context. They want to sit there and make a 10-minute video and then leave you hanging, bro. I mean, woohoo, the California State Athletic Commissions said that they're on board with it. But, you can bribe the California State Athletic Commission. You can bribe the Nevada Athletic Commission. You can bribe New York. These freaking clowns, bro. Yeah, there's bribery in the sport, and people can't accept it, bro. I'm not gonna sit back and I'm not gonna sit back and say, okay, when you get to the top, everything's gonna move straight. I can't say that for you. If you're a fighter on the top, like let's just say you're at a world championship level, like where you win a belt, anything in regards to that belt, you may have something go your way, then you may end up in a screwed situation in terms of business or situations leading into the fight. Of course, I put all the patterns together because there's multiple patterns to expose in the sport of boxing. Of course, with ex PED distributors running supplement company and using them to be a sponsor. Well, having past involvement with the voluntary anti-doping agency. We know the name of the guy I'm talking about. His name is Victor Conti. He's a dumbass. So the clown work is over. There's no reason for me to continue on about that. So Itauma is going to find this matter out. Of course, I'm going to go and see if I can contact my source, and we're going to get down to the bottom of this, and hopefully, hopefully the WBA is going to clarify and verify what is going on. And we have to see if they're gonna say, "Hey, Kubrat, you gotta face your mandatory now. That window was expired." So we got to get some clarity on that, and then we will be straight. And until the next one, this is Shriman Virabhaja signing out.